Massive protests in BERBICE following declaration of results. PPP bodyguards released. Multiple international bodies call for proper resolution of election. In the region, Central Americans await asylum declarations in Mexico. And internationally, dispute over Nile River Dam continues. Greetings and welcome to this edition of Headline News Update. I am George Gonzalez. Thank you for joining us. The fallout from yesterday's announcement of unverified results from the Guyana Elections Commission continues. This morning, demonstrations flared up across the BERBICE coast with protests turning violent in Bath settlement. Here's more.
Oh my God! This man pelted!
On the death anniversary of the late President Dr. Cheddi Jagan, massive crowds gathered in several villages along the west coast of BERBICE. They are calling for the continuation of the electoral process in the prescribed legal manner. Protests took place at Number 12 Village, Cotton Tree, Bush Lot, Kanji, Tain, and Bath settlements in BERBICE. Protesters have put up roadblocks and set several fires along the public road. The protesters in Bath settlement set a car alight, attacked police officers and a passing school bus. One of the officers who came under attack received injuries to his foot. 4 students in the passing school bus were left with bruises after protesters reportedly hurled objects at the windows of the bus. The children were treated at the Fort Wellington Hospital and subsequently released. The PPP issued a statement the same day addressing its position for the need for verification process to continue. It is also encouraging its supporters to be peaceful, saying, quote, "The PPP urges our supporters to ensure that none of their actions are in contradiction with the laws of Guyana. Stay home and await further guidance from the party." Channel 2 Headline News, George Gonzalez. There are also reports of demonstrations in Vredenhoop, Versailles, and Canal Number 2 in Region 3. Multiple international bodies have called for the verification process of Region 4's remaining votes to continue before swearing in a new government. Esther Sobers has that story.
On Thursday, a tally of votes on the General Mahaica surfaced indicating that the APNU AFC has won the region. However, the unverified results were rejected by all 10 of the other contesting parties. Shortly thereafter, multiple international observers' missions from the Commonwealth, the Organization of American States, the European Union, and the Carter Center, who issued a joint statement objecting the figures. Quote, "The tabulation of results from the election in Region 4 was interrupted and remains incomplete. The law requires that tabulation must be conducted in the presence of party agents and observers. Until this transparent process takes place, the counting of the votes recorded in Region 4 remains incomplete." End quote.
So what we've seen today, up until today, as you know, the Carter Center has commended the GCOM and has said the process was a transparent process. Yesterday and into today, the transparent verification of the results from District 4 was stopped. And the fact that there was no transparency about the results that were ultimately announced today means that those results lack credibility.
The statement further explained that the Guyana Elections Commission, including the chairperson, the commissioners, the chief election officer, the returning officer, and the deputy returning officers in Region 4 must be available and committed to establish the results for Region 4 in accordance with the law. Until this occurs, the results of these elections cannot be credibly declared. For Channel 2 Headline News, Esther Sobers.
Thanks, Esther. On Friday, the heads of mission of the Embassy of the United States of America, the British High Commission, the Canadian High Commission, and the delegation of the European Union to Guyana issued a joint statement expressing deep concern over what they believe are, quote, "credible allegations of electoral fraud which may influence the results of this election." End quote. The release went further to state that, quote, "they call upon all to ensure proper procedures are in place to yield a credible election result. A fair and free process is vital for the maintenance and reinforcement of democracy in Guyana. We call on President Granger to avoid a transition of government which we believe would be unconstitutional, as it would be based on a vote tabulation process that lacked credibility and transparency." End quote. This announcement came following a meeting with President David Granger on Thursday evening. During the meeting, he asserted that the executive branch is not interfering in GCOM's electoral process, as the Elections Commission is an independent body. And just hours after the joint statement was released, a representative of the United States Department of State responded more vocally to the electoral crisis that is currently taking place. Here's more. This morning, the United States Department of State joined the growing number of international bodies calling for no party to be sworn in until the Guyana Elections Commission has officially declared the election results for Region 4. The other contesting political parties, including the main opposition People's Progressive Party Civic, have said that the process that led to the declaration of results for Region 4 was marred by alleged fraud. Michael G. Kozak, acting Assistant Secretary for the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Western Hemisphere Affairs, said in a tweet, quote, "No candidate should declare victory or be sworn in while serious questions remain about credibility of March 2nd elections and whether procedures were followed." Newsroom sought Kozak for comment, and according to him, quote, "The Department of State is tracking the vote count after Guyana's March 2nd elections, and we share the concerns expressed by OAS and other electoral observers about the credibility of the counting process, and that a resolution of the issues in accordance in law is what will ensure the ability of the Guyanese people to choose their leadership." Channel 2 Headline News, George Gonzalez. On Elections Day, reports surfaced of 12 persons who were arrested for alleged suspicious behavior at a polling place after hours. Esther Sobers tells us that the men were released today.
The 12 men who were arrested for allegedly trying to remove statement of polls from the Alberton polling station have been released on bail. On Monday evening, after the country had cast their votes for the regional and general elections, the men were arrested after several residents converged on the scene. The men were found with guns and ammunition but were later verified to be legal firearm holders. According to a family member of one of the men who were detained, the men are employed at a private security firm. They were hired by the PPC as bodyguards for Election Day. Though the men were not charged, they were released on station bail and will have to report to the station. Headline News tried contacting the crime chief regarding the case, but all calls went unanswered. For Channel 2 Headline News, Esther Sobers.
Thanks, Esther. After the break, we have your regional and international news.
Hurry down to Zasco on 15 North Road between Camp and Wellington Streets. Quality products at low cost for every room in your home. 65 and 55 inches high-stand 4K smart TVs. Samsung French door fridges. Black & Decker appliances, queen and king size Canadian-made mattresses. German-made pressure pots in 5 to 9 liters. 12-piece pot sets, knife sets, cutlery sets and pans, commercial fans. Samsung smart stoves. Canadian-made 3-piece recliner sofa sets. Air fryers and Hamilton Beach hot and cold water dispenser.
For that reliable, prudent and courteous traveling experience, your choice is G3 Cabs, located at 228-229 Aubrey Barker Road and Beverly Close, South Renville Gardens. Traveling comfort and safety with our deluxe fleet of new vehicles and neatly trimmed drivers serving our customers around Georgetown. We deliver cooking gas, small packages, run errands, and provide minor vehicular roadside assistance such as jump starts of vehicles, flat tires, spare wheel assistance, and more. Contact us on 218-4982 or 218-4500. G3 Cabs. You can count on us.
This place is really hot. What's wrong with your AC?
It's not working.
Well, we wouldn't be able to continue this meeting anymore because this place is extremely hot.
Wait, please don't go.
Here's a company you can call to get your AC fixed. Action Cool.
Honey, what's dinner? I had a hard day.
I'm sorry you had a hard day, but guess what, babes? I didn't cook today because the stove is not working.
Having trouble at home or at the office? Then call the professionals at Action Cool. Our fully trained technical team have the skills and experience in repairs of all air-conditioned units, refrigerators, gas stoves, washing machines, and a whole lot more. For further information, visit us at 86 Hill and Princess Street, Mandela Avenue, Georgetown, or call us on telephone number 225-7867.
Welcome back. Now we take a look at news in the region. Many Central Americans waiting for their asylum cases to be decided in the US have to wait their turn in one of Mexico's most dangerous states. Al Jazeera's John Holman reports.
The moment we cross the border from the US into Nuevo Laredo, Mexico, we're told to put the camera down. This town's in the grip of organised crime. Despite that, it's where the US is shipping out those who've come to the States asking for asylum, shuttling them across the border to wait for months between hearings under a policy called MPP, or Remain in Mexico. And when they arrive in Nuevo Laredo, they're being systematically kidnapped. Shelter managers, NGOs and migrants themselves have told Al Jazeera.
3 out of 4 people on this program in Nuevo Laredo, where we are working for more than a year now, were reporting a recent event of kidnapping.
4 families shared their stories with us. For this Salvadoran, travelling with 2 small children, it happened just after being left on the border bridge. Like the others, he was too frightened to show his face.
I was scared, desperate. I took a taxi. In just 2 blocks, a black truck blocked us off. They told me to get out. They put us in the truck and took us to a house where they kept us for 5 days.
He says 21 others were in the safe house too.
All of them kidnapped. They had Venezuelans, Haitians, people from Cameroon and Mexicans.
Everyone told us similar stories. Asylum seekers appear to be picked off as soon as they enter the city. Their relatives are then called for the ransom. Listen to this 16-year-old Honduran.
My mom was scared, crying. She didn't know what to do. She couldn't get together the $800 they wanted.
It appears highly organised. Migrants told us you can even get a code word if you pay thousands of dollars so you're not kidnapped again. Mexican officials offer no protection, the asylum seekers told us. Among them, this Honduran man, kidnapped with his 11-year-old son.
The migration officers kicked us out, practically threw us onto the street. And not 3 meters from there, a car picked us up and kidnapped us. And I thought to myself, are they in it with the gang too?
Mexico's migration authorities denied our interview request, but told us via a statement, the moment that the foreigners are received by the National Migration Institute, they're given food and the opportunity to be safely taken to the interior of the country, in coordination with the National Guard, or to safe shelters. All of the migrants and shelter workers we talked to in Nuevo Laredo said that's not what's happened. They've had to find their own way to shelters, which they say they then can't leave. All of the asylum seekers we talked to say that they don't ever go out of the shelter unless they're going straight to their hearing, and that means that many of them have been inside for more than a month. It wasn't even safe for us to film in the street, and every time the asylum seekers return from their hearings in the US back across the bridge to Mexico, they're running a risk. What do you think are the chances that you'll be kidnapped again?
They're high, very high. You're not safe.
At least the kidnappers seem less brutal than in other parts of Mexico. Migrants told us they weren't hit and were let go if their families didn't have the money, but the trauma is still acute. And with Mexico and the US seemingly unwilling to acknowledge the severity of the problem, it's hard to see things changing. John Holman, Al Jazeera, Nuevo Laredo.
And internationally, the failure to reach an agreement on the Nile River Dam is worrying farmers in Sudan who rely on the reservoir for irrigation. Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt were expected to reach a deal at recent talks in Washington, D.C., but Ethiopia boycotted the meeting, accusing the United States of bias. Al Jazeera's Hiba Morgan reports.
Normally around this time of the year, Ahmed Balula's farm is covered with wheat ready for harvest. It's his source of income, normally earning him millions of Sudanese pounds. But he says he doesn't expect to make a profit this year because there's not enough water.
The water from the river is blocked in the canals because they're covered with dirt and silt. I have parts of my farm that haven't even been irrigated once. Some have been irrigated once, but by now they should be irrigated for the 5th time. It's not the first time, but this is the worst we've seen. This is going to affect our harvest badly.
Ahmed's farmland is part of what is called the Jazeera Agricultural Project. Established in 1911 during British colonial rule, it started as a 250 hectares farm. It now covers over 2 million hectares and is the economic lifeline for over 100,000 farmers. It was once the main source of foreign income, contributing to over 60% of Sudan's GDP. But since the discovery of oil in the 1970s, farmers here say the government's interest in the largest agricultural project in the country declined. The Jazeera irrigation system mainly relies on the sloping land, from north to south, to carry the water through the canals to the farms. It's been like this since it was first established, but some farmers say the system's now failing them. Thousands have reported lost harvest in the past decades, and they say the situation is getting worse and worse every year. The canal system covers less than 36% of the project. Its water comes from the nearby Nile River. And for farmers in Jazeera, there are concerns the irrigation issues will get worse. Neighboring Ethiopia is expected to start filling its Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam by mid-2020. The dam is being built on the Blue Nile, which flows from the country to Sudan and Egypt. Several rounds of talks between the 3 countries have failed to produce a deal over the duration of filling of the dam. Sudan's transitional government says it won't agree to any deal that will impact the livelihoods of farmers, but that the problem facing farmers is one of management.
The problem is not in the quantity of water coming to the scheme. The problem came in the management of this water coming from the Sinnar Dam rather than the shortage of water. There is no shortage of water in the dam, but there is a problem of water coming to how to manage this water.
Less than 500,000 hectares of the 2.2 million is expected to produce harvest this year. Some experts say other factors also play a role in how farms that were once...
A lot of it is genetically depleted, and this will cause problems on qualities, problems on productivity and all.
Farmers here say even with new technologies, their farms are at risk. They say if the Ethiopian dam reduces the water the project gets, they fear they may have to give up most of the land they've farmed for generations. Hiba Morgan, Al Jazeera, Jazeera State.
Here is your 3-day weather forecast. That's all for this edition of Headline News Update. Tune in Tuesday at 7 p.m. for another episode. Be sure to subscribe, like, and follow us on Facebook and YouTube, or visit our website at Headline News Ghana for more news.